My name's Chris.
And I'm Kristie.
This is the Washing Up Podcast, and well, it's not an episode, but...
No, it's an interview with Hoda!
Woo!
Welcome aboard.
Hello, thank you.
It is absolutely wonderful to get to speak to you, although obviously probably a week earlier than you would have liked. How have we been?
Thanks for rubbing it in.
Yeah, no problem. Wait till I get to where you failed. So...
Can't wait.
So, like fourth place is a bit of a badge of honor, like you know, because people remember you. They're like, oh, you just missed out. Like, you know, like you got a bit of something. They know that you're really good, but not as good as three people. But you're really good.
I'll be honest, everybody forgets you after the next episode. So that's a lie. But thank you. You know, thanks so much for making me feel better about myself.
Yeah, you almost made her feel much better. And then just stuck the knife in at the end there. So
I think I'm going to blame COVID. That's taken all my social graces. Let's just say that. No.
Yeah, let's not blame. We can blame COVID for many things in the world,
but not my social.
Your lack of social grace is not one of them.
No.
So obviously, a bit of a surreal experience getting to watch yourself on television, especially baking, which was something that, as they talked about on the show, you took up fairly recently.
I had, yeah, it's absolutely crazy to me to even think that I got on the show with my experience, but to make it to the semi-finals, I mean, that was absolutely surreal. But, you know, as Matt and Maggie said, I listened the most, which is surprising to most of my teachers in school. But, I listened and I took it on board, and it's amazing what you can do and what you can learn when you absolutely love what you're doing.
Oh, I totally agree. And, you know, not that there's a teacher in this podcast, but I really feel like if they just structured schools for those of us who need to be engaged in specific ways, like if they just threw everything into context of our interest, we'd be bloody like neurosurgeons by now, Hoda. Like you and me would just be like, ruling the world.
Thank you so again, trying to make me feel better. I am loving this. Thank you so much.
I think you're fantastic. And you know, if we can do a bit of consoling, because it, you know, it's so close but yet so far.
And once again, the knife.
Just sorry.
You build her up. Knife in the back. Doing really well.
I'm really trying not to.
I mean, look,
it's just horrendous.
She's stabbing me with a butter knife, which is kind of okay. So thank you.
I'm just so glad your husband's not Will Smith. That's all I've got to say.
Topical, ladies and gentlemen. Very topical.
Very topical. Too fresh.
It's raw. It's very raw.
Very raw.
I mean, look. We will get to obviously your baking background and that sort of story, but I do want to start though with the fact that when you were sort of commiserating at the end, you're like, oh, so close. You're like, and I didn't even get Star Baker, and everyone else had to remind you that you did.
Okay, can I please make one thing really clear?
Go for it.
When you are there baking, last week, quote unquote, seems like last year. It seems so long ago. You are so stressed out trying to make sure that whatever you're doing in that day goes well. You completely forgot. You just forget what you did and what you got. So if you got Star Baker, I just felt like I didn't, to be honest with you, because it was just last week and you don't even think about that anymore.
Oh, look, I think, you know, I mean, we all know that COVID times is at least, you know, like 9 years in COVID days. Or what's it called? I can't even, like.
A week in COVID is 9 years.
A week in COVID is 9 years. Yeah. So, you know, a week on Bake Off. And not only do you have all the Bake Off stuff going, but that weird ass COVID time going on too. So.
That's right.
Lots going on. Yeah.
And lots of dogs outside distracting people because, you know, that part.
Oh, speaking of dogs distracting people, they were so distracting. And yeah, there's so many cute little fluffy animals that came in. Side note, one of them tried to lick the butter underneath my bench and I had to get new butter. Thanks. That delicious.
Were there repeat offenders? Like, was it like, oh no, it's 10 a.m. Like Fluffy's going to come in through the door now?
She's coming back.
No, I wish it was repeat offenders. There's so many random bloody dogs every day.
I like the idea that someone's an owner's like, I can't be bothered to feed the dog. What time is it? They'll be baking the technical right about now. Let's go past.
Look, I'm just going to peel back the thing that we all know the doghouse was filmed there as well. Like, I'm pretty sure they used that same location. Are these just like a pack of feral dogs that were left over? That just
no, absolutely not. But you know what I find really surprising about those dogs is that they just freely roam into the shed, but no one really says anything to them. I mean, where are the walkers? Where are the owners? But I think these dogs, where do they come from?
Well, I think that we do have the answer to that. And I think the answer is that Mel Buttle summons them. And she just stands at the front. And while you're all really focused on baking, Mel just very quietly, a couple of chants, looks to the heavens, dogs appear in front of her.
Wow.
The dog whisperer.
Yeah, completely. She has a power. She has a gift. And
she has connections to the RSPCA.
And she has connections to the RSPCA. So those three things together, unstoppable. Power, gift, RSPCA connection.
She's like a real life Pokemon master. Like, just so many more different Pokemon. It's just dogs. I choose you, Chihuahua.
But that's I mean, the one. I choose you. Go and ruin Hoda's day.
I really enjoyed that. Like, that was during one of those episodes where like the dog literally walked in and they showed it. And like Mel just goes up, and again, she's mind melding with this dog. Like there's a full, she's communing with this dog. That's when I suspected she was summoning them.
I now want to see a charity episode where one of the bakes is for dogs. Like, you know, like they have that the Great British Bake Off Bake for Cancer kind of thing.
Yep.
Like, why not one that's raising it for the RSPCA and he's got a bake for the dogs because they have cupcake day. So
yeah, absolutely.
So wouldn't need to organise dogs. They'd just be there. They just wander past.
They'd be summoned. They'd just be summoned. So obviously, when you went into the shed, first of all, tell us about the process of applying for Bake Off from your side of things. So what was it that drew you to apply for Bake Off?
So I applied during obviously lockdown, and I applied purely because I absolutely love the show. I love watching baking shows, specifically Bake Off. Something about cooking shows that's so calming, and I find that majority of people that do watch the show, they don't watch it necessarily because they enjoy baking. This is other people, by the way. I bloody love baking.
No, that's us. We're those people.
I love eating too, but that's a different story. There's a lot of people that enjoy it because it's so soothing and calming, and especially Bake Off, it's such a lovely environment.
Yeah.
So I decided to apply because A, I love the show, B, I love eating, and C, I was getting far too confident in my kitchen thinking that I can bake. And then I got on. Then I realized, holy shit, I cannot bake compared to these people. They are fantastic. But yeah, so in a nutshell, I absolutely loved the show, and it drew me to applying because I started getting quite confident in my skills at home. And yeah, so I got the call not long after I had applied online. And they said that we would love to meet you via Zoom. I honestly could not believe it. I thought, are these people for real? And I told my mother this, and her response was, are you sure they called the right person?
That's confidence right there, ladies and
gentlemen. So really, I'm just making you feel at home with these kind of backhanded compliments. You know, like just like absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, even as far as the semifinals, even my parents thought, how did you even get that far? You know, it is just, I just love my family, you know, just pure joy.
I'm glad you didn't need like a cheer squad to motivate you to go on there and to keep going. Maybe we can find you. You've got your new Bake Off family now. You've got Mama Maggie and Papa Matt and sisters.
People
Claire and
really
Belle.
love, by the way, being called Papa Matt.
Sorry, cool Uncle Matt.
Here comes the butter knife yet again.
I really can't wait. I really can't wait for him to hear you call him Papa Matt. Oh, that'll be good.
God.
I want to be there for the reaction. I want to be there.
Excellent. Okay, great. All right.
But no, it's like it is. It's a very warming sort of environment when you get in there. But I like, just quickly before we get to that, I like that your part of your motivation was, I'm getting far too confident. I need a bit of a check.
I need to go on TV to put myself into place. I definitely, I honestly, I definitely applied, assuming that, you know, this is going to be a wonderful experience for me to actually grow my skills as well. It was definitely something that I wanted to take away from this experience. I wanted to grow. I wanted to learn new things, and I cannot comprehend the amount of knowledge that I have right now, just by being with other people that enjoy doing the same thing, and by obviously having Matt and Maggie, who are superstars at what they do. But, you know, just mingling with people that love baking. And baking is quite comprehensive. I mean, there's so many different layers.
Yeah.
See what you did. The other thing she picked up inside that shed, puns.
Yeah. You know, one of my girlfriends messaged me and she said, I'm hating this new Hoda. This too many puns from you. It's unacceptable.
Well, you know how to select your friends now. Like, you know, that's how we do it. We throw puns out. They can't roll the puns. What's the point of having them on?
That's it.
You know?
Right. But
you've got to get with the pun program.
So we'll get some of the negative out of the way. And the negative that I want to mention in particular is that you do have a distinction of being somebody who went on television looking to grow, but very nearly cut her own hand off. Now,
multiple times.
Yeah, like you. First of all, you were the queen of the blue bandage. Well done. That's a proud title. White. And then obviously you went next level, where you tried to chop a finger off. I mean,
yes.
How was the referred pain watching that one back?
How is your finger now, by the way? We need an update.
The finger's great. I do have a scar from that last cutting.
Oh, there you go. That's rugged.
Yeah, it will forever haunt me that I tried to peel a pumpkin.
You'll be whistling on your porch, and your grandchildren will be gathered around you. Tell us the story again, Granny, about the scar. You go, I got this from a vicious pumpkin, kitties.
It was a sunny day on the afternoon. I decided to make a pumpkin cake.
But it was just the way you were so confidently doing your talk to camera and chopping, and then they literally stop the camera as you bring the knife down on the hand, and you're like,
oh. You know, it was so bloody painful. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. It was so painful. But you know what the bizarre thing is that watching all of the episodes, I don't remember cutting myself so many times. I had a bandage on every bloody episode.
It's a game. It's a game you can play in every series of Bake Off. Is you just sit there and you watch the bandages appear on random bakers and try to work out how it happened. It was almost every episode where suddenly you're talking to camera and you start using your hands and we're like, oh, there's another bandage. There's another one. Yeah. Okay,
and it's the same one color, and it's a different finger. What is wrong with this woman?
I like the idea that by about week 3, you're now doing it just to troll people, and like you got a bandage on your cheek. Nothing wrong. Just put the bandage there.
Bandage on my cheek.
Yeah. Nose the next week.
That would be hilarious if someone going on like this, you know, new season that they'll be filming. Like I'm sure they're auditioning now because they've put the call out, and so they should be filming soon. Is if someone gets the idea, they're like, okay, I'm going to be the bandage queen. I'm going to be the new Hoda. Like just bandages everywhere.
And
one in the middle of the forehead.
And another one.
Every time the camera cuts back, no challenge, every time somewhere else. Just camera turns around, move it.
Honestly, I don't remember any cuts before that pumpkin incident. I don't recall any of them.
I'm assuming your brain blocked it out.
Yeah. It's bizarre to me. But going back to that pumpkin incident, I don't know if you remember the actual bandage, that last one that I had. So
it was massive.
It was massive. It was quite a deep cut. I don't want to be. I don't want to sugarcoat it, but it was a very, very deep cut. And I actually, it took me about half an hour for the medic to make sure that I was okay. Because I kept saying, I'm fine, but the blood was gushing out. And
it's just normally, a flesh wound. Like normally on TV, they try to not show the blood, but in your case, it was impossible.
Do you know it was quite severe?
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say that nearly chopping your hand off.
It went everywhere.
I wasn't sugarcoating it.
It went on the timer. It went on my my little scale. It went on the knife, the chopping board, some of the pumpkin. It went on the floor. It was going everywhere. And one of the producers was screaming, "Just put it underwater." She was she was not having it because there was a heap of people trying to just replace all of the equipment that my blood was just going on. And so she just said, "Put it underwater." And the medic came and he said, "Why did you put your finger underwater?"
It's not a burn. Told me too. It's not a burn.
Yeah. I said, "Oh, but one of the producers told me." And he said, "That's the worst thing you can do." He said, "Don't."
I love the idea that the put it underwater is just because they're just used to people burning themselves. So they're just like, put it underwater. And you're like, okay. And they're like, don't put your finger underwater.
That makes sense because, like, if you put it underwater, you're going to wash away all the stuff that's going to cause the coagulation of the blood. You want to put pressure on it.
Oh, bloody hell, the former nurse.
It was actually more McGill guide training that I'm harkening back to. My sister did a very similar thing to you, Hoda, but she was whittling at her first guide camp. I know, this is sorry, I do go on tangents. And she slipped and cut her finger really, really badly. But she was one of the people that they experimented. I don't know if you got it, but they have this glue now. So you can.
Yes.
Yeah. So she was one of the first people to like be glued together after a.
Was it deliberate or they just go, oh, might as well?
Look at
it's a badge. It's worth a badge.
Well, I didn't get the glue, but I did get a large black bandage that looks like I broke the whole finger, which I did not.
It look a little what's it called? You know, in James Bond, the guy who has like the fake like
hand. Oh yes, yeah.
Like it did look like
they've replaced your hand completely.
Yeah. It was so frustrating because it was one of the main fingers, let's say. Not that there's no main fingers. I like all of my fingers. But it was the main finger that you needed to apply pressure when you're piping. It needed the pressure when you're rolling. It also needed everything when you're taking bakes out from the oven. So I needed that finger.
Couldn't it have been another one?
Yeah, but I also want to say that I copped so much flack from the cameraman because they kept saying, "Move that finger out of the shot. I can only see the finger. I can't even see your bakes." So yeah, it was.
Did you give them the finger? That's what
I must say, multiple times.
Fair enough in this case. Yeah. So now we've got the negative out of the way. Let's get to all the positives. Let's get to the sweetness. Let's get to the sweetness and light, shall we?
Yes.
So, in terms of, you said you went in there to develop your skills. You went in there to sort of learn new techniques. Was there any bake in particular that after you sort of did it for the first time, in particular, you were like, I picked so much up from that one in particular?
French week, I would like to say, and I've said this to multiple people, friends and family, French week was a particular week that just blew my mind. There were so many different skills that I had never even attempted. I never even tried to Google because I assumed that you needed really heavy background in baking, or you needed a lot of experience or different tools and different little knickknacks, but you honestly don't. You just need to give it a crack. That is exactly what you need to do. It just applies to life in general. I think you just need to give it a go.
There were things like real patisserie in French week. It was great. Certainly no biscuit chandeliers. I certainly have no biscuit pinatas.
In particular, the puff pastry method. I never even attempted to make puff pastry from scratch. But it blew my mind what you could do, especially with puff pastry, and so many different ways of making it. I know it's just puff pastry, but there are so many different ways you can actually get different layers. It's
very Banners and Borgs.
Exactly. Well, were you even at one point when Matt,
buy 5 sheets or 10 sheets? How many will I buy from the freezer section at my local grocery?
But I mean, you even when Matt came up and he like asked you about that technique, where you the Portuguese technique you were using, rolling. Was that a night before, let's look this up, or was this something you'd looked at before?
It was maybe 6 hours before the bake.
Wow.
Absolutely. 0 sleep. I just did not sleep. So the thing with me was, because I had not experienced all the different techniques, I would say, as the other bakers, I was up until Lord knows what time, just to try and Google different techniques and just to try and research, okay, well, how can I not make a fool of myself on national TV? Okay, Google that. Take notes.
I think that's one of the things I've loved about watching you on Bake Off. You're one of my favorite types of bakers, in that you know that you don't know everything, but you've got this passion and this raw skill and ability to learn, and that enthusiasm to learn. And that's something, we saw your progression, and it's kind of like, if this was just like MasterChef length, by the end of it, you'd be like friggin' Nigella Lawson or something like. And speaking of Nigella, the moment when you are doing that Portuguese technique and Hoda, Maggie and Matt are watching, it reminded me of Hoda on her season of MasterChef, who was showing Nigella how to make the Persian fairy floss. So there's this beautiful
passion.
That I saw between what you were doing, and it's that similar thing, just that passion and that love for learning and baking and stuff.
And
so thank you.
With that too is then you also got to bring a lot of flavors from your own background in.
I did, I was fortunate enough to have that, under my tool belt, and be able to show flavors and maybe different techniques that they don't usually see every single day. There was a couple of things that I made that Maggie was really surprised about. I mean, my knefe, she's never had knefe before. So
I was staggered, by the way, just we mentioned on the podcast, I was staggered that she'd never had knefe before.
I know, right? Me too.
But there's not every, like, I don't see like them having a what's it called?
Knefe boys.
Like the Knefe boys, down in Adelaide Hills. They need it. Like they need it in the Barossa. But
do you know why I was surprised? Because it's quite a social media driven bake, and that's why I was surprised that she hadn't actually had one. But not only that, but there was a couple of other things that I did, which I thought I thought it was interesting that she hadn't had before. So I was quite impressed with myself, I must say, that I was able to actually showcase these techniques or showcase these flavors that really are truly home to me.
And is there other people who are cooks in your family, like your mum or your dad, or like aunties, grandmas? I should also reference the men, not just the women, obviously.
No, not really. My mum is a fantastic cook. She definitely inspires me every single day, just watching how she can just whip up things that are, I don't know, I just didn't even see them in the fridge. How did you just make this grand meal? I mean, it must be a Middle Eastern thing, because she could just whip up some beautiful dish out of nothing, out of thin air, really. So I definitely do take inspiration from her. I just remember my dad, the only time he's actually made a dish, I remember it was in Syria. I know this is really bizarre for a lot of people, but this memory has stayed with me for such a long time. My mum was out, she was working, and she told my dad to make food, and he's never baked in his life, by the way. He made a cauliflower stew with rice, and I think I must have been 6 at the time, and I vividly remember the flavor, and it was foul. It was so foul.
What I really appreciate about your storytelling, man, was the most beautifully painted picture.
I'm there going, oh, it's going to be a triumph and now a family favorite. No, it's just a horrible memory burned in his.
I'm not going to lie, I was really hoping it would go in that direction, and I was thrilled.
No, it was at that moment that I said to myself, I shall never bake.
You're like, you know what? What's the worst that can happen? I've had this. What's the worst flavor that can possibly hit me?
It just tasted like he had chunks of onion in there and chunks of cauliflower and some rundown. Let's move on from that story. It just was not great.
So if you want the recipe, everybody, just like, you know, get onto Hoda's Instagram and just get out there and you can ask for that one.
Big Cauliflower is going to ban you from Instagram. That's what they'll do if they get that stew out. I'm
so sorry that my dad did that to the cauliflower. Let's just
crimes against cauliflower.
Something I wanted to like. So you're talking about, you know. So did you grow up in Syria, or is that where like you spent your childhood, or?
Yeah, so majority of my childhood, I would say, the actual quite young memories from 2 years old to 8 years old. That was the time that I spent in Syria. And a lot of people might classify that as not growing up there because that's quite young. But
no, but they're formative years. They're really formative years, you know.
They truly are.
Yeah.
They truly are. I remember quite a lot of significant events that had happened, and I take quite a lot of pride in those years, actually, from what my parents had to do just to put food on the table, for example, and just to keep us, you know, going and keep us having a normal childhood. And for me, when I look back at those years, they were quite a happy one. And I always remember food around that. And, you know, for us, it was always celebrating food and making sure that everyone got a birthday, no matter what. It was just little things like that. I really, really do appreciate and respect those years and what my parents did at that time. But yeah, growing up in Syria was quite a beautiful experience.
Yeah, because we had Nostalgia Week, you know, where the kind of expectation was to share these, like, I don't know, like very Australian
shared memories,
centered experiences. And we, you know, we mentioned it during that week. We're looking around the shed going, not everyone's from, you know, like their like childhood in Australia.
And like the problem is, there were so many people who had childhoods elsewhere who were inside that shed. And so you're going to end up with people wanting to do similar sorts of things all the time. And then when they branch out off that, that's going to become trickier as well. Like, again, most people's first experience of Australia and baking is probably a Lamington,
which you mentioned, you know, you remember.
Yeah, and you talked about that in particular. And I think that Nostalgia Week was kind of it was an interesting one for us watching it from the outside, knowing that everyone had, well, a large percentage of the shed had grown up somewhere else.
I think with the approach of Nostalgia Week, at the end of it, what they had told us was it needs to represent what you feel as though is nostalgic to you. And I feel as though that if that was somehow communicated in the episode somehow, and to us as bakers initially, it could have gone a little different. And I think it would have probably gone into the good different path where you would see so many different bakes and flavors, and
just find a bit more just divergent flavor.
Correct, yeah. And the reason why I chose the Anzac, I didn't choose the Anzac, I chose the Lamington. I wanted to choose the Anzac actually, but it was too simplistic. I was like, well, what am I going to do with an Anzac? The Lamington cake, because they're just icons, and I do remember them as growing up. I don't remember baking them, that's for sure, but I do remember eating them. Those are quite iconic things to me as growing up. I've never had a Lamington, and I said that to Matt and Maggie. I'd never had a Lamington at all, and then I came here and I thought, wow, you know, small little things as a child make the biggest difference. A Lamington is one.
And is there anything that you can't get in Australia? Like even at the, like, you know, little off the beaten track bakeries that I'm sure are around in different pockets of Australia still don't have what you miss?
No. There's so much. There is absolutely so much access to so many different ingredients and so many different flavors nowadays. And yeah, the internet the internet has made it quite easy to order anything from overseas, to get anything. Don't get any ideas, everybody. But yeah, let's keep this PG.
No import export.
Yes,
but we're talking baked goods here.
We're talking about fine bakewares. That's what we're discussing here, people.
Even I remember when I was making those biscuits with saffron and pistachio, for example. And saffron is, and I said this I said this to Matt and Maggie actually. It's fascinating to see saffron in Woolies and Coles. I mean, it's one of the most prestigious ingredients in terms of the herb world. When you see it at Coles and Woolies, not a specialized supermarket, at Coles and Woolworths. We are so lucky to have access to so many different ingredients.
And I think it's been really eye-opening for people during the pandemic, when we've had supply chain issues and suddenly haven't had access to the things that, whether the usual brand of something that we want, or, having to find out, okay, that's not in stock. I mean, beyond toilet paper, which seriously, like someone's got a toilet paper hoard, like Maggie's butter hoard.
Can we just appreciate for one moment in regards to the toilet paper? People were hoarding more toilet paper than food.
Yeah.
They were more worried about what
there's an issue there.
If you're that
is
worried,
going in.
If you're that worried, buy a bidet.
But I mean, as
find a bum washer.
But as you're pointing out here, and it's very true. They were more worried about the coming out than the going in.
Yeah,
and they're not easy to store. Like lots of toilet. Like we get a box of Who Gives a Crap, and there's only
love them. Great.
I love social enterprises. They're one of my favorite things to support. And so we get a box, and there's only 2 of us in the household, so it lasts for quite a while. But we have to find somewhere to put it.
Store this box.
Toilet paper.
You know what I find it surprising with the toilet paper situation. I know this is a baking podcast, but let's just
we
for
talk
a moment
everything.
speaking that.
We talk everything.
I find it fascinating that people weren't stealing the toilet paper from Westfields. What do you think about that?
They weren't stealing it from where?
From Westfields in a local shopping centre. Yeah. Don't you think that's a brilliant idea? I always thought about that.
I mean, I know people stole toilet, like when I was a pretty poorly paid legal secretary, I would nick off with some toilet paper because
Oh,
I mean, my issue with people stealing it from a Westfield and going to the toilets is that it's very single ply, and no. I'm sorry, but I'm spoiled. I like my hotels at minimum 4 stars, and I like my toilet papers with several ply.
So should you then go and look for the expensive clubs? I'm talking you go to the affluent areas in Sydney, and they're bound to have good toilet paper.
No, just go to Bankstown Sports.
You reckon Bankstown Sports has good toilet paper?
Oh yeah.
Okay, quality toilet paper.
They're in there all day. They're in there all day gambling.
All right.
The affluent areas have a lock on their toilet paper. Let's be honest.
Exactly.
Unlike Bankstown RSL, where they probably won't even have any toilet paper.
No, they won't have any toilet paper because no one's in Bankstown RSL because all sports. So let's vaguely bring it back to baking because we'll wander. Yeah. We'll wander again. We spend all of our time wandering. This is what we do. We mentioned before about going in there, obviously, and getting to sort of see all of these different bakers at varying levels of experiences and with different backgrounds and different styles.
Yes.
How was it sort of watching that blend together, especially very early on where it seemed to click into gear pretty fast?
Yeah, it does. It does. When you're there for a common purpose, it does click quite quickly because, you've got quite a strong connection to one niche particular thing, which is baking. So you get to open up quite quickly. And it's very fascinating to see it on telly, but behind the scenes, we spent a hell of a time talking about baking. We spent a hell of a long time about different backgrounds and different experience. And especially, with particular bakers, we would spend a little bit more time speaking about different experiences that we've had in life and how that's influenced our baking, but not only baking, but influenced us as people as well. So you click quite quickly, yes, but not just on a baking level. Yeah, just as friends, I just found them such lovely people. They did such a good job with kind of putting this group together. And they always do say, the producers, when I say they, I mean the producers, they always say that when we pick a bunch of people, we want to make sure that they will get along and they will look like they will be friends outside of this show. And it's bizarre to be thinking that, 12 strangers are now good friends. They really are. It's such a wonderful.
It's not like they're people that, how can I put it? It's not like it's unthinkable that they'd be your friends in real life, but there's some people who you might not cross paths with in a normal or have an opportunity to cross paths with them in a more in-depth kind of way. So I think it really is.
I mean, literally in some cases, because some of them live in the middle of Tasmanian wilderness, for example. So
who would have thought?
I mean,
Nerman and his thylacines.
The chances of you bumping into Nerman and his thylacines on a daily basis, not high. But
it actually would be high, because I was planning to go to Tassie just before lockdowns, and we were talking about this actually in the shed. I said, I'm going to this restaurant, and he said, oh, that's a really good restaurant. So I could have seen him there.
Who's that guy in the overalls wearing a black hat?
Oh no! And I'm thinking of sliding doors, like you and Nerman in this kind of Gwyneth Paltrow thing, where COVID doesn't happen, and you go to Tasmania and you just meet each other at this restaurant. It's just like one night of a nice conversation, and that's it. Whereas now, friends for life.
BFFs.
Yeah.
So, was there anyone in particular, like what were the bakes in particular from other people that you sort of looked at and went, that's brilliant, I really love what that idea is?
Oh, I thought you were going to say, is there any bakes that you saw that you thought, nope, not putting that on that?
No, that's later on. I mean, we've already got the story about your father's amazingly poor stew, so I'm sure we'll come to that.
There's so many different things. It can be
visually, or I mean, I know that because of COVID, nobody got to taste anybody else's bakes. Wink, wink. But it can be taste or or visually, either or.
I am going to just say the one particular thing that I did not expect to like, and it was the pavlova challenge. I absolutely despise pavlova. I think it just is a waste of a dessert. I honestly do, because
that's the harsh views coming in now.
Wow.
I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I absolutely love Australian classics, and I used to say this all the time. I was so excied for nostalgia.
No, if you don't like it, it's a Kiwi classic. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's totally Kiwi. Yeah. I love my Kiwi friends. But pavlova, the texture's fantastic, but the taste is just sugary for me. So I found that quite challenging, that particular bake. Not from a taste point of view only, but from baking it. For God's sake, who makes a pavlova in 2 hours? Honestly, no one can. No one can.
Unless you buy the base and you're just putting the toppings on.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly right. Thank you very much. And that's exactly what I did. No, I didn't.
And here's what I prepared earlier.
We're almost at your pavlova egg magic challenge.
You could have got a dog and trained it to bring in like a pavlova base for you.
Yes, I told the dog to run into the shed, eat my pavlova, and I could say the dog ate my homework.
Oh yeah, that's even better. and it'd make for great TV. People like, oh no, look at the pav.
The dog actually ate her pav.
But in saying the pavlova, I must continue this story, because it actually does have a happy ending, unlike my cauliflower story. Ella's pavlova, I could not stop eating. I couldn't believe I was enjoying a pavlova so much. The way that she had made it was quite thin, so it didn't have that it had the chewiness that everybody loves, but it didn't have that eggy flavor at all because of the way she baked it. So learning that technique was quite, mind-opening for me at that moment. So that I always find quite special. Will I make it myself? No. But I enjoyed it.
Just, if you ever get the random like whim to eat some pav, just go and knock on Ella's door and go, hey, hun, just whip me up a pav.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she'll do that while she's doing 6 other different things and entertaining her children.
And hosting her own TV show, which again, we've talked about this idea of, her show, which will be on ABC Kids. It's going to be amazing when it happens.
Ella's Place.
Ella's
with her
Place.
Worry Monster sidekick.
Her Worry Monster sidekick. It's great.
And
is this an actual thing, or is this something?
Oh no, we've put out the whole way along that Ella's time on Bake Off has been one long audition for Play School.
Do you think so?
Yeah, well, I mean, look again. Now last week with the Worry Monster, we've spun off now, and it's her own ABC Kids special.
And now what I want is similar to like what was it? Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
It's like all the different bakers. You come and knock on the door, and she makes you a bake that you request. Like you could
maybe it could go like, it's Bake School.
That would work.
Perfect.
That would work. That's a win, and because it's from the national broadcaster, no royalties attached to singing. That's a
holler in there.
There's holler in there. Yes, there would be too.
Yeah. And the bunt as well.
Yeah.
It's gone now.
Come inside, eat my pavlova.
No innuendos. This is a PG film show.
Sweetness and light.
Sweetness and light.
So to vary it off, now
we've got this whole eat my pavlova.
Well done, enjoy that. To branch it off
there's a title.
To branch it off a little bit. Now, obviously, there were some unusual ingredients that either were presented to you or other people were using. What was the most unusual / challenging ingredient, and why was it Jaywin insisting that he was going to use durian?
Do you know durian is my dad's favorite fruit? So I've actually...
Was it in the cauliflower stew?
It wasn't. My dad has spent many years in Indonesia, actually, before coming into Australia back in the day. So he can actually speak fluent Indonesian, which is so bizarre for an Arab man. He used to eat durian all the time, and I remember the smell of it as a child, and it just doesn't make me want to throw up like everybody else. So I was fine with it. I was completely fine with it.
And you were far better than Matt.
Matt was such a baby.
Here we go. What a pun. I've called him Papa Matt, and you called him a baby.
Oh, it's completely fine. I actually remember telling Matt, I said, you are bloody mean. I remember saying this off TV. And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm just honest. And I was like, oh, so you really do hate my baking.
Now, I have to think, I think that's an Aquarius trait, or no, Scorpio. I'm trying to think, like, who is that star sign that's kind of like, I'm not being mean, I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
But
no,
so durians.
I've got to put that straight. He was not mean. He was truly honest. But if he didn't like something, he would tell you why, and that is really interesting for me because there's always ways to better something, not just because he didn't like it. He would never say, I don't like this just because I don't like the flavor, but he would say, I don't like it because it could be incorporated better, or it could have been added to something else to enhance the flavor. Obviously being politically correct and having producers with you helps, but I truly did love the experience that if there were stranger ingredients or different bakes that they might not necessarily like, they did give you actual hints to incorporate it better and make it better.
Well, it's something that and it's something we said at the start of the series when, like, it was in the first episode or the second episode where all these people were talking about being scared of Matt. And we're like, why? He's actually not mean. I think a lot of people get Paul Hollywood in their head and decide that he's got to be that role, but he's not. Normally that role. I've actually put forward the theory a few times now that Maggie's actually a bit nastier than Matt, but she says it in such a lovely way that nobody notices it. But
I must agree with you. I think when I went in, I thought, oh my goodness, Matt Moran looks scary. And I think he likes that, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
He loves the fact that he does look scary and he does look intimidating. But
Maggie cuts with kindness.
The loveliest person that I've ever met, because he says he truly cares about what you're doing and how you're going to end up with what results. He really, truly cares about, you know, your baking skills and how he can teach you better ways to making your baking journey look better or taste better. So yeah, it was quite surprising. He was really lovely. And Maggie, I think it must be an age thing. You know, when people get older, they just don't care anymore.
The fucks are out the window.
Yeah, she cuts with kindness, which is what I love about her. Is that it's so lovely and sweet that even if she's there going, this is the worst flavor profile I've ever eaten, you just sit there and you go, oh, thank you, Maggie.
Yeah,
it's
she's
wonderful.
an angel.
Thank you. I love it so much. And meanwhile, she must go away of an evening and go, why do they all love it when I tell them their food's not good? I can't work this out for the life of me.
She is an angel. But you know what? Most people ask me, they ask me, is Maggie really as lovely as she seems like she's on TV? That's the number one question I get. They don't care how I did as a baker.
No.
Maggie, you can't fake that niceness. Like
No, you can't.
You know, we went to, was it our first?
It was the second one of the grand finals.
The second grand final that we went to for Bake Off. They were literally having to call Maggie back because she was just so patient, getting photos and selfies.
She was introducing herself to everybody like they were a long lost relative, and production's going, Maggie, we've got to judge the grand final. Can you come back? We've got to judge. She's like, in a minute, I'm just saying hello to all these wonderful people. And meanwhile, I was standing there while Matt was eating meringue that I had in a container, standing there, and he's just eating the meringue, waiting for Maggie.
Marshmallows.
Marshmallows. It was the marshmallows.
Yeah, Monica's marshmallows.
Yeah, Monica made marshmallows, and I was holding them, and Matt was like, "Can I have these?" And I'm like, "They're not mine. Go for it." But yeah,
she was so caring in the sense that she really wanted you to know what you did wrong in the technicals. So after the technicals were filmed and we had the opportunity to taste them, obviously everybody does their voxies, everybody runs along, and you know they have to do different things for the show. You know, it doesn't just stop there, as you would know. There's other things to do, and she would stick around and she would just answer everybody's questions.
Wow.
And have a little one-on-one and say, okay, no, well, you didn't bake this as long, and this is how it could have been better, and this, I think this was the issue with yours. She just had all of the time for everybody. Honestly, she is so lovely.
And it's that encouraging sort of spirit that always ends up taking over the show. And
you don't see that on telly, you know, you don't see these little bits and bobs on telly. And yeah, she is bloody lovely. She is such an angel.
But it's Claire and Mel who are the real bitches, you know.
You said it.
You seem
Butter
like
knife comes out yet again.
Divas. I can just see them turning it up, going, speak to my people.
Utter divas. No, they're again, it's one of the reasons why I think everyone ends up really enjoying Bake Off is it does seem to have, you know, and again in Australia it always gets referred to as the no dickhead policy, but it does always have that no dickhead policy, and everyone on the show is there, as you said, for a common purpose. And it's not, there's no faux forced drama, there's no need for the drama because the bakes are what people are there for. And
that's right.
That, and also some quality narration skills. Now, were you aware that you were going to end up narrating half of the shows? Because you kind of ended up doing that on the edits. They just kept on cutting back to your bench.
That last episode, I noticed it. And I'm like, who am I talking to?
What? She goes, oh, if Ella's auditioning for her show, I'm getting in on the action.
What I loved about the last one, the way it was cut together, was you went over a couple of times to Aaron's bench to ask him things, and then came back, and then they cut back to you to camera to explain it. And it was almost like I was waiting for you to go, did you just see me go ask Aaron?
Okay, so this is the thing with so the producers actually, have spoken to me about that. And it came up randomly in a conversation that I was having with the producer. And she told me, she said, the reason why it's easy for us to get you on telly is because you're so verbal. So you're constantly explaining things, and you're explaining them quite well when I'm talking about what I'm doing. And I also think that I talk to myself quite a lot in terms of being crazy. No, I talk to myself quite a lot when I am doing things that I do not know how to do.
Well, yeah, you're processing, and we've talked about your growth. As you're processing it, you're verbally processing.
It is. And it's a trait that I've learned in my professional career, because I did quite a lot of training, and I did staff training for many, many years. And you are constantly explaining things, and constantly explaining it in a way that's quite simplistic for the mind to comprehend. So I find that with the technical bakes, if you've ever noticed, those are the times where I'm reading out loud exactly what I'm doing. And I'm doing that for me because I need to comprehend what I'm reading so I can put it into action. And that last episode, when I went over to Aaron, that's because I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
I'm a verbal processor as well. And like, I would absolutely die if we go hardcore, like the olden days of Bake Off, where no one could talk during a technical.
Which I've been pushing for, but anyway.
Yeah, us verbal processors would die.
Yes. I feel as though that it would be a lot more challenging if we were not able to go to each other's benches and ask questions. The bakers, having the bakers there to bounce ideas off is such a helpful tool. There's definitely some pros and cons to that.
So before we sort of start bringing towards the end, I'm always, so we talked a little bit before about some positives and some good bakes. What is the one you did, apart from pavlova for flavor, obviously, that you just looked at and went, never doing that again in a million years? Not a hope.
A bake in general, or you mean a technical?
It can be anything. I mean, usually it ends up being a technical, because usually everyone's like, not the bloody technical.
Is it the biscuit chandelier or the?
Yeah, you're making a pinata next week. Or...
I will make I would rather do a pinata and a chandelier and a gâteau Saint Honoré in 1 hour combined than make another pavlova.
Such a pavlova vendetta.
I love it.
I don't like it. I'm yet to have a pavlova I love. Obviously Ella's was lovely.
You've got Ella to make one for you. Why would you bother?
It is quite a technical bake to do. It just doesn't deliver on the effort.
You're like, I've put a lot of work in it, and this is what we're doing.
It's like when you go for seafood, why go for crab claws? Like, unless you're going for those huge, big Alaskan crab, which I just don't think we should eat in Australia because it's not fresh. But why go for crab claws? Because there's so much effort in eating a crab. Not the soft shell, but like just de-shelling a crab for piddly little amounts of seafood.
I must agree with you there. Yeah, exactly right.
It's important. It's very important.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, why all that effort for no payout?
And if and in the most question I think I'll ask all night, and we'll finish off with it, which is, what's the one bake in there that you're the proudest of?
It's the turtles, I've got to say. It is the turtles. I was so proud, I still am, that I was able to put that together with the time frame that I had, using ingredients that I hadn't used before, and to make it taste delicious and look delicious. I was so bloody proud of that. And I must say that as soon as filming stopped, it got devoured.
You're like, no, not my turtles.
I did want to take some home with me, and I didn't find any.
Someone kidnapped the turtles.
I don't know if you watched The Office, but I just imagine you're like Michael Scott, like, where are the turtles?
The turtles are gone. The turtles
because
are gone.
By the time you got called out to do a voxy, so you're getting out to set just to kind of go over what had happened that episode. I come back to try and put one in a little container so I can take it back with me so I can eat. They were all devoured. They were all devoured. So yeah, definitely proud of that one. That one's my favorite.
is that something that you'd like to do again, you know, like for a family thing or just for fun or maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been asked for the recipe multiple times actually, which is funny. I really didn't think they looked that fantastic on telly, but it must have.
It resonated.
Yeah.
They absolutely resonated. Well, it has been an absolute joy to get to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Is there anything you'd like to spruik? You know, your Instagram, your turtles, your where people can send their pavlova, you know, to the moon.
I would absolutely love it if everybody was inspired by any of the baking that I have made throughout the show to obviously message me and share that experience with me, because it does make me incredibly happy. But if not, yeah, just follow me on Instagram so I can inspire everybody to make some more baking. I'm doing a lot of videos there and posting a lot of my my baking from home.
Oh, fabulous.
Outstanding. Well, thank you very much, Hoda. Really appreciate it. Yeah. Until next time, I'm still Chris.
And I'm still Kristie.
And we will catch you all later.
Taste my pavlova.